Good evening and welcome to another edition of Talk of the Town. Our normal host tonight, Bernard Terrence Devaney, is at our Southern Florida Bureau and not able to be here tonight. I'm Len Lucci, your guest host. We have from the far left, Lynn Skirpon, attorney at law. The middle left, Eddie Pounds, a Bowie attorney and former voice of Bowie. And of course on the right, our distinguished mayor of Bowie, Mayor Fred Robinson. Tonight we have a very special treat because tonight we have 3 attorneys piling on the mayor. So this should be fun.
It'll be a fair fight.
It'll be like a Roman Colosseum. Anyway, why don't we start off with the most earth-shattering political event of the week so far, maybe of the month, and that is the indictment from the grand jury, federal courthouse of former county executive Jack Johnson, 8 counts of bribery, extortion, tampering with evidence, and other bad things. Any reaction to that, panelists? Lynn, I know you have something to say.
Well, I don't think anybody is surprised by the indictment, given the events of the last couple of months. It was just inevitable that they would come down. I think I was a little surprised at the magnitude, because of course I hadn't heard any of the rumors or details of what all the charges might be. But as we talked earlier, I think the bottom line is that it's a sad day for Prince George's. That's what sticks with me, that it's just a sad state of affairs.
Eddie?
Yeah, it is a sad state of affairs. I do agree with that. But with the incoming, with the new county executive, Richard Baker, I sort of feel a sense of renewed pride. I was a little surprised after reading, when the news first broke about Jack Johnson and his wife. And then when I saw the indictment, it was quite disturbing. I don't know if sad characterizes it the best way for me, but probably disturbed. But for anyone not to realize why ethics is a big issue for our county now, why it is a big issue, I'm just a little confused as to why they've taken that position.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree completely with Eddie. To quote a distinguished Prince George's lawyer from WTOP today, he said, I think he said, I was surprised, and I was disappointed, and then I was sad for Prince George's County. Isn't that what you said, Mr. Lucci?
Absolutely.
Like okay. And I think that's a fair characterization. You're surprised at first, and still a little bit of shock, and then you feel sad for the whole process, for another black eye for the county, and in all candor, you can't not say that the county government over the years has at best a checkered history. We've had challenge after challenge after challenge. And I agree with you. I too have a lot of hope invested in Mr. Baker. I think right now he may be the right person at the right time in the right job. As all this continues to build, I think those that are sitting back and saying, no, we can't go too fast or too far on the ethics bill, are going to be shunted aside, because I think the public is just not going to tolerate it anymore. It's just gotten so blatant and so overwhelming, and you get in a conversation with friends in Montgomery County or Eastern Shore or whatever, and the jokes are all there about the criminal conduct by all your elected officials, and it's sad because there are quality people in the county government. There are quality elected officials in Prince George's County and the state of Maryland, and unfortunately they get tarred with the same stuff. I just want to see this thing go forward, and if these people are guilty, drop a building on them, and then let's move forward.
Here's what surprised me by the 31-page indictment. It showed cash transfers as early as 2003. It showed cash payments in relatively small amounts, $3,000, $5,000, $8,000. Is that worth blowing your life for? And it had a long recitation of wiretapped conversations, mostly from the telephones, but it looked like some of it actually was from the home. That it must have had a wiretap in the home, and it's just amazing. So, what do you think that means for Prince George's County in terms of its reputation in the metropolitan area?
Well, the reputation is obviously tarnished. And I think not only the county executives ethics reform bills, and by the way, let me take a step back. Return Baker didn't think of these bills overnight. If you look at his campaign, he ran on a platform of ethics reform. There is obviously, there was a perception, which turned into reality, that this is a county that fosters pay to play. And, I think what the legislation, all of the legislation, not just the county executives, the county executives legislation is just it's a minimum standard. It's really the floor. And if you look at the legislation that's being introduced by most of the state legislators, they go a step further. Some would argue that Return Baker's legislation just doesn't go enough, but you have to start somewhere. And it's not an issue of attacking the current council or any current elected officials. I think what they are attempting to correct are past bad practices. So you've got to start there, and then that's a step in the right direction.
I think we also need to make clear that Rashern's bill is not a reaction to the Jack Johnson indictment. Rashern has been talking about ethics reform well before this story about Jack and his wife ever came out. So, this isn't just something, a knee-jerk reaction on his part. This is something that he has touted for a long time, that I know he believes in and believes is necessary for this county.
Yeah, I think all of that's true. And the thing that troubles me is the whole kind of a process that, the general public perception is you got to pay to play. When I go out and I try to attract businesses to come and locate in Bowie, you have that same kind of a problem that they look at you a little bit, say, yeah, it's a great investment area, it could be this, it could be that, and then they start getting exposed to permit processes and whatever, and it starts to be discouraging. But the thing that is there's still a big unknown out there, because if you read the indictment, it refers to candidate A and candidate B and developer B and developer C, so there's clearly some more shoes that are going to fall. I would love to see this federal investigation conclude, move a little faster, because it's been going on for a long time. The problem is in their interest to be thorough and focused consumes more time, and that just keeps the basket and the lights on here longer. Let's come to a conclusion. If there are more people that have to be indicted, do it. If there are more people that have to go to trial, do it. If there are people that have to go to jail, do it. And let's move on so that we can rebuild, because it's going to take a while to overcome this.
Can the county's reputation and image be recovered?
I think it can, but I think there's going to be some major changes. The council for years has resisted any encroachment on the land use business, and which I think is part of the problem. And you have this anachronistic process where you have the park and planning board, you got people that work for the county executive, you got people who work for the county council, and then you try to blend the whole thing together. So there's inherent difficulty to bring business and development in that you want, and then it all gets kind of pushed off to the side because you have to go through all these different agencies and different procedures. I would hope that when it's all said and done, there could be a clear delineation of authority. I'd like to see the executive held accountable for making recommendations for all land development in the county, and the county council charged with the responsibility to approve or disapprove, and kind of get rid of some of that other noise in the background. Now,
that's the way it works in the other 21 counties.
Well, there's one other thing that works everywhere else except here, and that is one of the good things that could come out of it for our community is that, I've been arguing for years that Bowie ought to be making land use decisions that affect the city. And the county council has fought us tooth and nail because clearly development is the mother's milk of the political process. If you look at our procedures and how opposed they are to the county's procedures, it may well be that cities like Bowie could carve out of this thing its own authority to do these things and maybe bring other standards up to ours. Because if we were in any county other than Prince George's, this wouldn't even be an issue.
Right. Hey, if only the city had a good representative in Annapolis doing their bidding. Anyway, let's talk briefly about the county executive's two proposals in Annapolis and get your comments and thoughts on what you think that could do. One is it gets rid of the slate loophole, so the county council members can't raise money from developers through slates. Every council member had one or two or more of these slate committees, raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you never knew which campaign they were going to until the end. And the other bill bans what are called call-ups, where a matter can be before the planning board, and the council member calls it up and can keep it there for an unlimited amount of time without any criteria or standards. And in the past, there have been allegations that that was done to shake down developers. Unless you do this and this and this, it's going to stay on my shelf. So any reactions to either one of those, whether that could help out, whether it's a good idea?
Well, I think they're both good ideas. You know, eliminating the loophole, the slate loophole, and the existing standards that apply to the county council and the county executive moves that process forward and gets rid of some of the junk out of there. You know, in regard to some of the other things, you know, part of me says I don't have a problem if a council member that represents a district says, look, I have a particular problem with this development and I wanted to come over here and we're going to shine a light on it. I think that's part of their role, and I can live with that. The suggestion that you made, or the observation you made, is where the problem is. Council member can call up a project and let it sit on his or her desk for months and months and months, and it's not really being done, you know, to shine light on a project or to make it better. It's just to let it stall there.
No other county allows the council to do that.
It's another unique condition.
But why should we be any different?
And there's an appeal process where you can, if you have real grounds and real procedures, you can actually appeal instead of having to do this process here.
I think both of them are good ideas.
Eddie, are you in favor of these bills?
I am definitely in favor of the bills. You know, the only bill of the two that is receiving pushback, well, both are receiving some, but the one with the most pushback is obviously the one that limits the call-up function. And I don't want to call it authority, because I think the issue right now is that the council has this perceived notion that there's some type of power grab by the county executive's office. And that's not essentially the case. I think, you know, this is my own opinion, but I think what is attempted, what's trying to be accomplished is sort of like a protection measure, if you will. You know, Mr. Baker's protecting the council members from being accused of any unethical behavior. And I'm not certain that the council members see it that way. And I think I recall seeing a quote from Councilwoman Mary Lehman, you know, sort of pointing her finger at Mr. Baker, saying, you know, let's keep in mind, let's remember who walked away in handcuffs, you know, Jack Johnson. And, you know, and I just sat there and I reflected on that for a moment, and I said, well, you know, he wasn't the only one who walked away that day with handcuffs on, but also his wife, who's currently sitting on our county council, who's a part of this so-called district council, which has the call-up. So we're not pointing, and if you paid attention to any of Return Baker's interviews, you know, and he was asked, you know, if he had a position on whether, you know, Leslie Johnson should stay or go, he didn't state a position. So he's not finger pointing at all.
I think the council feels, first of all, let me say, I think both these bills are meritorious and ought to be passed immediately. I think the council feels that they are being picked on, that they are being targeted, and what, 7 of them are new, and they feel like we haven't done anything yet and we're being punished for the sins that came before. I don't see it that way. I see it like you do, that the county executive is proposing something that will benefit everyone, not in reaction to who's sitting there currently. And I don't think it's directed at Leslie Johnson. I think it's directed at clean government.